What's going on, guys? Brendan Dworzinski here with you. It is your 580 Sports Talk daily update, just like we did on Thursday. No show as regularly scheduled on 580 AM or 104.9 FM, online, on YouTube, wherever you may listen to or watch the show every single day because of the state high school basketball tournaments. But because we've still got plenty of sports news to get to and we want to update you on what the tournament schedule is going to look like, we've got our 580 Sports Talk daily update right here for you today. So without further ado, let's get into all the big headlines, all the big news here on the final day of the week, Friday, March 8th. And we will start off with our updates from the state high school basketball tournament and what games we are going to have coming your way on 580 WIBW coming up a little bit later on today. So first, a recap from Thursday night, the second day of quarterfinal action. Really fun day for a lot of our local teams. The Seaman girls, they had a crazy game against the DeSoto Lady Wildcats, but for the third time in 3 tries this year, Seaman knocked off DeSoto. So the 5A Seaman girls, they're on to the semifinal round coming up a little bit later on today. In 4A, we had coverage of the Rock Creek boys. They fell to Atchison, the Phoenix, knocking off the Mustangs in that one. But down in 3A, what a couple of games for the Silver Lake Lady Eagles and for the Lady Wildcats of Hayden. They both cruised to wins in their opening round games on Thursday, and now on semifinal Friday, they will play each other. Cannot wait for that. I know a lot of folks around Topeka, around Shawnee County have been looking forward to that game, well, potentially really all year, but certainly once we found out the brackets for the state tournament, that almost feels like a state championship game in the semifinal round. And that is going to be part of our featured game coverage coming up on Friday. So here's our schedule for you. The Highland Park boys, they cruised to a win over Andover in their quarterfinal on Wednesday. We've got them taking on Cape and Mount Carmel out of Wichita coming up at 2 o'clock. That will be our featured game. Dan Lucero on the call of that one. As for our 4 o'clock window, we are going to have full coverage of Silver Lake versus Hayden. That is going to be our number one game coverage on the day. We are going to also have updates throughout the day from the Seaman girls game. They will be in action as well in their state semifinal, so we'll break in with coverage of that one. It'll be Spencer Dupuis on the call of Hayden versus Silver Lake for 3A girls. And then in 6 o'clock, that window, our featured game, the Washburn Rural girls and head coach Kevin Bordewick, they are inevitable, and they're going to get the Derby Lady Panthers. That is coming up at 6 o'clock. Greg Akagi on the call of that game, and then we'll do whip around coverage from around the state from 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock. And of course, all of the action from the day will be recapped on the Kansas High School Basketball Scoreboard Show with Eric Peterson at 10 o'clock coming up tonight over on the terrestrial radio side, 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. All right, let's get into some of the other big sports news from around the sports world today. We're going to jump right into the NFL here because the Kansas City Chiefs, they have maybe the biggest NFL headline of the last 24 hours or so, or at least one of the biggest headlines, some of the biggest confirmed news. We can at least say that. They're bringing back Drue Tranquil, and I am thrilled. I could not be more happy about this. And it's a good deal, I think, for both sides. So the terms of this originally reported by Adam Schefter. It was Jeremy Fowler of ESPN who first reported that a deal was done. 3 years, $19 million total value, $13 million guaranteed. That's the practical guarantee of this deal. So effectively, when you break down when the guaranteed money is going to be paid out, how much dead money is at the end of the contract, this effectively becomes a 2-year deal with a third year as an option year. For a player going into his late 20s at linebacker who you got for nothing off the scrap heap in free agency just a year ago, who was as good as Drue Tranquil was down the stretch for the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't know how you couldn't be fired up about this signing, to be completely honest with you. Our pal Jordan Foote from Sports Illustrated had a little tongue-in-cheek comment, although maybe not totally tongue-in-cheek, about the Chiefs bringing back their best linebacker. Well, when you consider durability, when you consider role versatility, I think there really is an argument that Drue Tranquil might have been the best linebacker that the Chiefs had last year. And this is a good deal for him, too. He gets a little bit of security. You could tell he loved playing for this Chiefs team. We remember right before the Super Bowl, he shared that text on Twitter. Yeah, he shared it on Twitter, the text he had gotten from Andy Reid when he was going through free agency with Big Red telling him about come here to win Super Bowls and all that. Well, he clearly was able to, A, accomplish that, and B, we remember from the championship parade just a few days after the Super Bowl, the way he was celebrating, talking about football in Kansas City and the fans that the Chiefs have. I think this deal ends up working out really well for everybody. If you're a linebacker who's already hit free agency once because the team that drafted you didn't want to sign you. Then you have to play on a 1 year, what was effectively, all things considered, a prove-it deal last year for Drue Tranquil, to then get a multi-year deal with that same team. That's really impressive for him. It speaks to the kind of caliber of player that he is, the year he had a year ago. Really excited to see him back with this Chiefs defense. And now you've got your linebacker core set if you're Kansas City. And going into a year where you've got some things you need to figure out. What are you doing with L'Jarius Sneed? What are you doing with the interior of your defensive line? You've got to figure some things out offensively too. Depth on the offensive line. What are you doing at left tackle? Who are your pass catchers going to be outside of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce as your main two, to be able to have one position that is locked on, nailed down, no worries about it at all? You got to feel pretty good if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Nick Bolton, it's Drue Tranquil, it's Leo Chenal. There's your top three. You're going to throw a practice squad guy or, your 53rd man on the roster in there too. That's a really good unit when you get contributions like you got from Drue Tranquil a year ago. So very, very excited about him coming back for another couple of years, at least for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a bargain too, man. You're getting a starter at that kind of price who can play at that kind of level. That's a big time win for the Kansas City Chiefs. Other news from around the NFL in the last 24 hours or so. This one I don't get. Another player re-signing with the team he played for this past year after his previous team let him hit free agency. On the defensive side of the ball, also involving the Kansas City Chiefs, Tyrann Mathieu got a 2-year contract with the New Orleans Saints. He was going to hit free agency. Instead, he gets a new 2-year deal. Okay, I mean, it's not breaking the bank by any means to bring him back, and Saints fans seem to be at least fairly excited about it. It's not like the Honey Badger is awful at this point, but he's certainly not the guy he was in, say, 2019 when he was a first-team All-Pro with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was also first-team All-Pro in 2020, but I believe that one was more about name recognition than it was actual quality of play. Not that he was ever bad with the Chiefs, but, age and the injuries and maybe a little complacency, I think we're very clearly setting in with Tyrann Mathieu. And Saints fans, I will say this, and it's not necessarily a compliment, they are right there next to the Green Bay Packers, my favorite team, so I know I can speak to this, where if you're from the area, you just desperately want everyone else who's from the area or went to school nearby to play for your team. Wisconsin Badgers / Green Bay Packers fans have this unbelievable desire to always have, we got to have our hometown guys on our team. New Orleans and Louisiana and Saints and LSU fans, they are exactly the same way, it appears. So I'm not surprised that Saints fans are really jacked up to get Tyrann Mathieu back for another couple of years. Would I have done that when the safety market is as robust as it is? Probably not, but by the same token, sure. Would Xavier McKinney maybe be a better player at this point? Maybe you can make an argument for Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer, maybe Justin Simmons, if you're a big fan of him from his 8 years with the Broncos. Maybe those guys are better players. They're also probably going to get paid a really hefty amount of money. So if you can get Tyrann Mathieu on a not cheap deal, there's very little that is cheap, but if you can get him on an affordable deal, you're probably going to end up fairly willing to take on a contract like that. And again, Matthew's not bad by any means. He's fine. I mean, the new contract is going to cost 2 years, $13.8 million. You can live with that if you're the New Orleans Saints. They're probably going to stink this year anyway, if we're being completely honest. I don't know why they have not at any point stopped kicking the can down the road to put themselves in a more advantageous spot to bring in free agents who are, better than Derek Carr. And they already had to restructure after 1 year, Derek Carr, because they don't have any room against the cap. And also, he's been a disappointment because he's always been the same guy his entire career. But that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that more coming up when training camp begins in just a few months. One other thing from the NFL that I think is important to note, reportedly, according to multiple different places, Russell Wilson has had interest from both the Steelers and the Raiders, and may have even, on Friday morning, met with the New York Giants as well. So there are 3 teams there that have at least been considering Russell Wilson. The Steelers were the first ones to come out, and reportedly, while on his way to Pittsburgh, Wilson connected in New York and at least had a cursory, exploratory meeting with the New York Giants. We got old Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones maybe as the battle in New York for the starting quarterback role. Best of luck to you. I think the Steelers make a little bit of sense. I I don't think that's a great fit, to be all honest with you, but maybe it's okay. They've got to figure a lot out with their offensive line. They got to figure out some kind of run game. I don't know that he's a perfect fit with the wide receiver talent that they have there, so we'll see how that one possibly unfolds. As for the Raiders, I mean, if you're the Chiefs, if you're the Chargers, shoot, if you're the Broncos, are you all that worried if the Raiders go out and sign Russell Wilson? No, not really worried about that at all, to be completely honest with you. So that's, for now at least, where the interest lies in signing Russell Wilson. I don't know if any of those are great fits, but if you're him at this point, you're probably a little less worried about fit and more so worried about, can I actually get a starting quarterback job? I do think he is going to end up starting games. I know I shared that on 580 Sports Talk the other day. I do think he will start games this year. I just don't know where the best fit's going to be. The one nice thing about Russell Wilson is the Broncos are paying all the salary. He's guaranteed those $85 million that the Broncos have that are eating up their cap space right now. He's getting that regardless, so he can sign a vet minimum somewhere, and it's barely going to cost anything to get him on your roster. Other notes to get to from the last 24 hours. Big news from college basketball recruiting. So Indiana, let's start there. Let's start the Indiana Hoosiers. They have, or had, I should say, one commitment for the class of 2024. Exactly one of them. His name was Liam McNeely. He's a big man, he's 6'8", kind of a 3-4 combo player, sort of a big wing, and he's a shooter. He's a really good shooter, in fact. KU was pursuing him hard during this most recent recruiting cycle. He ends up committing to Indiana. Reportedly, and this is according to Eric Bossy of 24/7 Sports, among some other places as well, there were whispers pretty shortly after the commitment that there were some concerns from McNeely's camp about the commitment to Indiana, but that's where he wanted to go. Then, one day after Indiana announced they were going to keep, or it was reported anyway, clearly leaked to the media, it was reported, though, that Mike Woodson is going to return as Indiana's head coach. Liam McNeely decommits from Indiana, and now everybody everywhere is indicating KU has got to be the favorite here. Trilly Donovan on Twitter, if you're into the college basketball social media world, you've heard of Trilly Donovan before. He's very tied in. No, not Billy Donovan, Trilly Donovan. He seems to think it's going to be KU. A lot of the KU insiders, including our pal Michael Swain, seem to indicate it's going to be KU for Liam McNeely. From the KU perspective, this is great because you need shooters. I don't know exactly what the roster next year is going to look like. At this point, I'm expecting Johnny Furphy probably is going to go to the NBA. Sounds like he's going to be a first-round pick. Hard to debate with that. I would love for him to come back. He's probably, I would guess, leaving for the NBA. Hunter Dickinson, I think, is going to come back, but it is certainly possible that he ends up leaving. I mean, some guys are just done. They don't want to be in college for that long. And frankly, I can understand it. I do think he is going to come back. I think he'll make more money from NIL than he would in the G League or overseas, but that's just my personal opinion. Don't know if anyone else is going to end up transferring. Obviously, you've got 3 other recruits who have already signed, including one of the best big men in the class in Flory Badunga, who have signed to next year's KU roster. I don't know exactly what the personnel are going to look like, but I do know this. And I think you, if you've watched any KU basketball this year, also know this. KU needs depth. KU needs shooters. And even if Liam McNeely is not ready right off the rip to be a all Big 12 caliber player, he's going to be able to shoot. It's something that is translatable. There are a handful of NBA draft guys, of college basketball recruiting insiders. I'm thinking right off the top of my head of Sam Vecini of The Athletic, who say, hey, I really like this kid's game. I like his shooting ability. I like his size. I like what he projects to be. I'll take it if I'm KU at this point. I will very happily take that if I'm KU at this point. Again, you need shooting. I don't care if it's coming from a 6-foot guard. I don't care if it's coming from a 6'8" wing or a 7-foot big man. You got to get some shooting on next year's team. And if Liam McNeely does end up committing to KU, that is going to be a really, really big deal for the Jayhawks and a really talented get for Bill Self in the spring. Spring Bill Self, man. Also, real quick, just while we're on the topic, Mike Woodson was not a good coach in the NBA. Great player in his day. He's been around basketball for forever. It's a little surprising, and I don't even know if surprising is the right word. It's almost astounding just how god-awful he is as the head coach of Indiana. They now, as I mentioned, Liam McNeely was the one commit, the one signee that Indiana had for 2024. Indiana basketball, a program that still believes it is a blue blood, that it is among the best of the best in college basketball. You know, what is it? Every other state, it's just basketball. This is Indiana, all that. he's driving him into the ground. And they've committed to him. They have said, yes, he is coming back for another year. How can you be this bad at the job at Indiana, a basketball hotbed where it's treated more strongly than religion in a state where religion is a pretty obsessive topic? It's incredible to me, and it's incredible to me that a school like that would be willing to keep a guy like that who can't recruit. It is well known that he hates recruiting. He clearly can't coach. Their team stinks. They're awful to watch. They're playing super antiquated basketball. And look, if Indiana's loss ends up being KU's gain, I'm not going to complain about it. And I'm not going to complain about them keeping him either. I just am shocked. And I know he's bad at his job. I am shocked he is this bad at his job. Final thing I've got for you guys today on our 580 Sports Talk daily update. Again, no show on our airwaves today because of the state high school basketball tournament. Did want to remind you, we've got Washburn basketball coming up today as well. 5:45 pregame start time, 6 o'clock tip-off time on Country 106.9 KTPK. It is going to be the Washburn men beginning their MIAA tournament run from Municipal Auditorium in Kansas City. Washburn taking on Rogers State, Ichabods versus Hillcats from Municipal. Washburn is the 4 seed in the men's bracket. Rogers State is the 5 seed. First game of the tournament for both of these teams. Washburn already has 2 wins over Rogers State this year. A blowout 93-71 at Lee Arena the first time they played. That was the game when Washburn made 17 3-pointers on just 28 tries. That's over 60%, by the way, for those of you keeping track at home. Then in the second game, when they played in Claremore, Washburn had a little bit of a meltdown at the end of regulation, but still ended up winning in overtime 80-74. So it's a good matchup for Washburn. Hopefully the Ichabods are able to pick up a win here, bounce back from that tough one over the weekend against Emporia State, and then head into a potential massive matchup with number 1 seed Northwest Missouri State coming up on Saturday. Again, 6 o'clock start time, 5:45 pregame start time on Country 106.9. Yours truly will be on the call of that one for Washburn basketball from the MIAA tournament. That's going to do it, though, for today's 580 Sports Talk daily update. Don't forget to listen to the Kansas High School Basketball State Tournament all day long from 2 o'clock all the way up until 10 o'clock on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9 in the capital city. You can also listen to all the game coverage on our website, 580WIBW.com. We will be back with a full edition of 580 Sports Talk coming up on Monday next week. We'll have a bunch to get to. We'll be recapping KU versus Houston and their regular season finale. Senior day for K-State against the Iowa State Cyclones. Cats need a win as desperately as can be. I'm sure we'll have more NFL headlines as the start of legal tampering begins on Monday, so get ready for that. So much coming up Monday on 580 Sports Talk. But until then, I am Brendan Dworzinski. Talk to you later on for Washburn Hoops. Hope you listen to the state tournament, and we'll talk to you for 580 Sports Talk coming up